I'm really glad to be here, and I'm learning a little bit more about this organization. And as I get closer to the age of maybe not coaching anymore, I like to know some of the options out there. And so it's good to learn a little bit more about this organization. So thanks for having me. And yes, I don't keep track of all those numbers much. I just know that I've been coaching a long time and I love what I do. And so it's fun for me to come and tell you a little bit about our program here at the University of Utah. I was kind of asked to give an inside look to Utah Gymnastics, and our nickname are the Red Rocks. And I would love to tell you more about our program. I feel like sometimes it's nice to show, we've got great videos. We're fortunate to be covered really well and to have some talented people that help us put together some nice video stuff. And I've got a couple that are quick that I think will, if you haven't been to the Huntsman Center during a meet, you'll get a taste of it on my first video. And then I have a senior that was recently part of the New Heights fundraising campaign for the University of Utah. Ruth Watkins, our new president, launched that campaign maybe 2 weeks ago this Friday, and one of my athletes was featured in that really neat event where they had all of the big-time donors of the University of Utah there, and I have that little video on Shannon McNatt. So I thought I'd show you both of those, and that'll give you just kind of a start, especially if you don't know a lot about my program, and then I'll go from there and talk a little more about some details, okay? And then I have this young man that's gonna take care of the button pushing. And maybe a little volume. Just a little more. Is that me? Ooh, there. Okay, so that gives you a little bit of inside the Huntsman Center on meet night, and obviously my girls do a lot of high-flying, flipping, and twisting. And that last year we led into the meet with that countdown video. This next one is on Shannon McNatt. She's a senior with our program, someone we are very proud of, especially her academic work is kind of second to none. So listen a little bit about what she's been doing.
Gymnastics has always been a huge part of my life. The gym is like kind of a release for me because it allows me to come here and just be myself for a little bit. We train 20 hours a week in the gym, but on top of that we have extra time in the training room and obviously to compete. Gymnastics has really taught me how to be on a schedule, how to be dedicated, and I think that transfers over into academics. My name is Shannon McNatt. I am a senior from Houston, Texas, and I'm majoring in QAMO, which is Quantitative Analysis of Markets and Organizations. So it's kind of like a business econ degree. It's very analytical, a lot of data analysis, statistics.
The QAMO major really does provide something of really high value to Utah students and to the David Eccles School of Business. It's designed to really bridge in the sense of combining the theory and the econometrics with the business question that you care about. The other thing which I'm proud of is it's really demanding. The expectation is that students come in with a strong technical background, students like working hard. We really think the Megan Marsden Institute, as well as the QAMO major, allows us to have within a business school the same kind of scholarly and academic presence as places like Berkeley, Columbia, and other top state and private schools in the country.
I really do love the work. I've always been a bit of a perfectionist. Like, I hold my standards pretty high, both in the gym and in academics. You know, I never accept anything less than an A, which sometimes, you know, stresses me out. But it's really a progression over time. You don't just go from the floor to the high beam and say, well, you know, I hope it goes well. So we have progressions of how we learn skills, from drills to low beams to eventually to high beam. And that progression is the same in academics. Like, you go through your education, you build from the ground up. Also, obviously, you know, balance is important for the balance beam, and it's the same in academics. Like, you have to know how to balance your time. But definitely it takes a little guts to get up there and, you know, grow your skills every day.
Over the years, I've seen a number of student athletes that figure out how to excel in the classroom, you know, excel on the playing field, broadly construed. And these people, you know, they have just a higher limit. You know, they show up in the workforce and they can do more because they're used to getting a lot more accomplished in a scarce amount of time.
I definitely feel a sense of community here in Salt Lake City. There's so much support for the university. Like, you see new buildings going all the time. Everyone's so proud to be a Ute. And I feel that not only in the academic realm, in the Eckel School of Business, but in athletics as well.
Okay, so a little insight to one of my athletes. I have several, and they all have great stories. And Shannon, I get a little emotional. Shannon's one that has not had as many accolades out on the competition floor, but she's really made up for it by representing us so well in the academic community. And to have her featured was really nice this year and a couple weeks ago at a big event. So that was an exciting thing for Shannon. I thought I would start, maybe if I'm going to give you the inside, I'm going to give you the beginning of Utah Gymnastics and take us back to 1975. Not long before that time, the university was asked, because of Title IX, to offer more varsity sports for women. And they decided, after seeing Olga Korbut in the '72 Olympics and people like that, they thought gymnastics might be a good, you know, sport to look into. They weren't exactly sure who they were going to get to do that, but they had heard that there was somebody in the PE department that was working on a doctorate in sports psychology. He had done diving in his undergrad work down in Arkansas. He was teaching some gymnastics at a local club. And he was helping with cheerleading camps and teaching some gymnastics. So they asked, who eventually became my husband, Greg Marsden, if he was interested in starting a gymnastics program. And they offered him $1,500 for the year and and $3,000 to put together equipment, and told him to see if he could find some gymnasts in the area, which he did. He was able to put an ad in the Chronicle and look for some local gymnasts, and he ended up with 7 girls. He put together in one of the hyper gymnasiums, just the basketball gyms, some gymnastics equipment. And in that first year, in 1975, his team actually qualified to the championships, and he didn't even know how they had done that, but they had qualified, and they got a call, and Greg took his team. It was his first plane flight ride ever for him. Took the team back east to compete, and they ended up 10th in the nation out of 16 teams that were there. And that was kind of the beginning, and from that point on, he didn't really continue to pursue his doctorate in sports psych. He decided that gymnastics really could be something here at Utah. And from there, he just jumped each year 2 to 4 spots at the national championships, until I arrived on the scene. And I came here in fall of 1980, and Greg recruited me to come here. He actually didn't know me, but he had a friend in the Midwest area. I'm from Iowa. And his friend said, you really should consider this athlete. And he said, I've got 3 scholarships this year. I've given 2 to national team members, so I can afford to gamble a little bit on this little gal from Iowa. And so I'd wanted to go to Southwest Missouri State. I was hoping to stay in the area that I knew, but that program actually, their coach decided to resign from doing that because they wouldn't let him build pits in his gym and what he needed to really stay at the highest level. So he got out of it, and that's part of how he called Greg to say, I've got an athlete that I think you should look at. So I came here and helped win some championships. And Greg's first championship was in 1981, and I was a freshman on that team, and we went through a string of 6 in the following years. I think my experience was really an incredible one, and I think part of what I loved about this program, and I didn't know another program inside and out, but from what I could tell, there was something special about the way Greg was using our sport to teach lessons of life, from day to day to day. I remember having team meetings that were really priceless in what we would learn. And I think Greg was one that knew, especially with the sport of gymnastics, it's not a lifelong sport. It's definitely a young person still. You don't, once you're done doing it, you don't, a few years later, decide to flip some more. It's very dangerous to do that. And so, unlike maybe tennis or golf or swimming, those sports you can consider it kind of lifelong. Our sport, the flipping and twisting, goes away pretty soon after you stop doing it. And so Greg knew that for his athletes that were here for 4 years, that he needed to begin to prepare them for life after gymnastics. And most of us were somewhat sheltered because we had kind of given up our childhood to become really good gymnasts. And so he had a lot to teach us in a short amount of time. But that's something I considered really special about our program, and so special that I really felt throughout my time that as I finished up, I wanted to coach as well, that I could see that there's so much that you can pass along to other young women, and I wanted to do that. I wanted them to come and have the same experience I did. So in 1985, I started coaching, and it just so happened that Greg and I had gotten married the year before. These are things that would never happen in this day and age, but that was long before now, and we managed to pull off kind of a Harlequin romance deal back in the early 80s. And so, but what was really exciting is I had a chance then to coach alongside my husband. A lot of what I learned from him, I helped continue on, and it worked really well to do it as a husband and wife. In our sport, some of the events tend to lend itself to a female coach where there's some dance, music on floor and dancing and leaping, and then for a male coach, the spotting, needing to toss the girls up in the air, catch them. And so it's very common in my sport for there to be a male coach and a female coach, and sometimes it's husband and wife. So we were kind of the next to begin in that process, and it made for quite a career, the two of us. And my husband retired 3 years ago, and Greg and I found Tom Farden, who's my co-head coach now, a few years before that, and we both could see that he might be a good person for me to carry the program on with. He had some great qualities as a young, vivacious coach, and so I've enjoyed working with him as well. I thought I might, from that point, so you know a little bit about how the program got started a long time ago, and some of the keys to our success. We talked a little bit about the number of people in the stands, and I love that you mentioned that we fill it and basketball doesn't, but I'm hopeful that we can fill it and basketball can fill it as well. It's important that we support one another, and if the basketball team's doing well, if the football team's doing well, then the rest of the sports are doing well. So I'm always cheering for all of us to fill the stands. Some of what I think over time has helped that with Utah Gymnastics is to recruit athletes here to Utah that are pretty amazing young women, and that's something that both Greg and I worked very hard on in the early years, was to look for athletes that wanted to come to Utah. We would always watch in a recruiting trip when we'd have an athlete in, we'd watch to see if their eyes looked up and looked around. And if they did, we knew that this was someone that could recognize the beauty around us and how unique that is for kind of their setting for their university days. Many of the other top gymnastics programs that we have recruited against are not as fortunate as we are to have a Salt Lake City right here around our university. Many of them are in smaller little college towns, and some of them, in my opinion, not much beauty around them. And so we would always try to really push that in the recruiting process and look for athletes that wanted to come enjoy that beauty, work hard as a gymnast, get a good education, and then also have fun performing in front of a big crowd. And that also is something very unique to our program. We have some other programs out there that are trying to follow our lead. They like to ask, they used to ask Greg, now they ask me, you know, how do you put 15,000 people in the stands? And they're looking for, you know, the one-year plan. And I tell them, well, it's taken a lifetime and of daily work. Building the community support that we have with a season ticket plan that started 30 years ago, where Greg thought maybe we can sell season tickets, and to start a group of people that he communicated with on a regular basis and had them with word of mouth begin to spread and create a larger fan base. And then as we got a little bigger and had more people in that Huntsman Center, then to begin to copy some of the sports. He looked to the pro sports for the show that you need to put on in order to keep these people coming back. So for any of you that have been there and have seen the cheerleaders and the Jumbotron with all the stuff on the Jumbotron, and swoop in the stands, and music and those types of things, lights out intros with fireworks going off. Greg got all those ideas from pro sports, and then we tried to implement them in the Huntsman Center for our gymnasts and for our fans. And that kind of began a process of our marketing and support for our program. Back in 86 through 96, much of that was happening with a three-man show, pretty much. I mean, Greg and I and another assistant, every once in a while there'd be somebody in the department helping us a little. But now, at this point, I'm proud to say that we have a whole marketing team that helps us prepare each year for all of this. Oh, okay. So we'll wait for a minute. In a minute, okay. That's okay, that's okay. So, it's because of that? You didn't want to hear that, I'm sorry. I hope I make it worth your while. Good, all right. Well, so marketing and fan support, that I feel like is one of our keys to our success, and we are able to attract some athletes to come because of that. Gymnasts who have spent a childhood becoming really good at what they do, and they see with our program being marketed so well online, even if they're in Virginia, they might see that I'd really like to go to Utah. Look at all those people that they have in the stands that just love what they do. And we are able to bring in some pretty amazing athletes that want to experience that. They want to land a dismount and hear that thunderous roar of appreciation for what they have worked so hard to accomplish, because many of them have really had very little notoriety for their talents. So I feel like that's one of our keys to our success. Another thing is our sports psychology. So with Greg, having sports psych in his background as a young man with his schooling, he implemented that right away into the program back in 1975. And we had a professor on campus named Dr. Keith Henshin, who was a sports psychologist, and that was who was going to, it was Greg's professor that was helping him with his doctorate that he didn't finish. But Keith Henshin, Greg brought into the program to help our athletes better handle the decisive moment when they are asked to perform these amazing things in front of judges and people, and at the national championships, and be able to handle that well enough to, as a team, have incredible accolades. So I've always felt that Utah Gymnastics, with our sports psychology background, and the fact that we continue to be kind of on the cutting edge of using that. Back in that time, with Dr. Henshin in the early 80s, a lot of people thought of a sports psychologist as someone that would lay you on a couch and they'd say these weird things, and then you'd fall into a trance, and then they'd make it so that all your tricks were better or something like that. And a lot of people thought it was a bunch of voodoo stuff, and didn't really believe in it. And Greg knew more about what was going on in sports psychology, and that it was very task-oriented, much like what our gymnasts do in their training each day physically. When they, go to balance beam and they're told, you need to hit 3 of that trick and 3 of that trick, and they do these task-oriented things. With sports psychology, Dr. Henshin would give us things to do in the evening in our mind. I want you to visualize your beam routine 3 times. I want you to see it as if it's you doing it. And then I want you to put yourself over in the stands and watch yourself do it on the beam in your mind. And I listened to him, and I'd come back to him and go, okay, is it a problem if I see myself kind of like fly off and fall on another beam or something? And he said, just means you aren't very good at it yet. Keep doing it. Keep doing it, and eventually you'll get good. So that type of knowledge in early years, there were other gymnastics programs in the country. In my day, Arizona State was our big rival, and their coach was a great guy that also attracted really good athletes, but I believe that we beat that team over and over again because of our sports psych. And John Speeney, that coach, didn't know anything about that. And he might have had his girls going to someone that laid him on that couch and told him a bunch of mumbo jumbo. I don't know, but I felt like we had this secret weapon with our team, that we knew how to do these special mental practices that helped us in the decisive moment not be overwhelmed with fear or nerves or doubt, but instead with confidence and tools that would help us handle all of that. And we've been helping our athletes with that for many years. So sports psychology, something I felt like we were really on the forefront, that gave us a chance to be successful early on. And then the other thing, I mentioned this a little bit about training the whole person, which is teaching our girls a little bit of life lessons through their sport. That too, I think, separates us a bit, because we think almost daily about where there is a teaching or a lesson that needs to be talked about or mentioned or shown to one of our athletes as something comes up. So I'll try to use a couple maybe examples in recent memory of a teaching moment. And with a team, we like to do it team-oriented. So if one athlete ends up finding, we found out that one of our athletes had missed a third of her classes, which was kind of unheard of because our athletes are pretty good and know that they're to go to class. And so when we found that out, that Tom and I were concerned, and so that got brought up in line to the group, and then the group was told that this means that I guess we're going to have to do some class checks. So then the whole group knew that they were going to get checked on whether or not they were in class. So a little life lesson about a team thing, and for the athlete that didn't communicate with us, she had a pretty good excuse, but she hadn't communicated. So there was a little teaching about communication. Tom talked about the cornerstone to all success in life is communication. You need to communicate. And he took a moment to teach that with that example that yesterday there was a few tough words at the start of practice and me going on my bike to go see who's in class. But it all could have been remedied with some communication, and then that wouldn't have had to happen, kind of thing. So we use that as a teaching moment. That happened on Monday and Tuesday of this week. So those are, that's an example there. I know that Greg was always very good to help teach when I was on the team, a lot about responsibility, being accountable, and that much of the time it would affect the team if you as an individual didn't do those things, and that it wasn't just you anymore in life. It was a team of you, and you need to make sure that you're handling yourself appropriately. So I think that that's something that I'm sure some other gymnastics programs out there, and maybe our other teams here on campus are doing some teaching through their sport, but I've just always felt like that's like a primary thing with us. We really try to do that a lot. So I thought I've got a little second part that I'm going to talk more about the here and now and this year's team and some of that. But I thought I would stop for a minute just to see if there's some questions, as I've gone through quite a span of some years and some things. And I thought I'd get a few questions, and then I'll finish up with some other things. Yes?
Thank you. What about the men? We know you very well and have come and gone, but what about the men's?
Men's gymnastics. Yes, so here at the university. Men's gymnastics. Do we have men's gymnastics? Why no men? And we don't have a men's gymnastics team. No, and so, which it makes me sad, but well, sometimes not. It could be a little trouble if I had a men's team working alongside my women's team, and they may not be quite as focused. But that's something, it's kind of bigger picture. With an athletics department, they can only offer so many sports, and University of Utah doesn't choose to offer men's gymnastics at all. No. Now, I hear that even before 1975, I think there was a men's program that was more of a club program. It wasn't one of the athletics department's teams, but there was a men's team. But when Greg started in 75, no men's team. There's only a handful of universities that have men's gymnastics now. It's kind of, they have to go to a different university. Yes, yes.
Last year, we started the year, I think, competitive with UCLA. Nobody knew who was the best, but they ended up #1 and we ended up #5. And what happened?
That's a really good question. I'll tell you this. So I think on that night, the difference in score was probably 5 or 6/10 of a point between first and fifth, sixth, which, 0.5 is not very much. In gymnastics, that's a couple of hops. So if you've got a team of 6 on each event, you've got 24 routines that happen on that night, and that would be a couple hops on vaults. We had an out of bounds, 2 out of bounds on floor. Those are 1/10 of a point. So that was the difference. Very small things, but costly in terms of placement. The difference between our two teams is not that great. So we took turns last year, winning and not winning. Our team won at their place on the road. Then at Pac-12s, I think they beat us by 1/10 and a quarter or something. And then at regionals, I don't think we had them in our region, did we? Okay, thank you for helping remember all this. And then at the national championships, they were the national champions. So our sport is subjective. For anybody that watches it, it can be one of the worst parts of gymnastics. For me, the two least favorite things about my job are the judges and the injuries. And everything else is really actually pretty amazing. But those two things, if you let it get to you, it can take you down. So judges are tough. They're subjective, and we are always trying to please them. And sometimes it's hard to know what they're looking for exactly. Yes?
So what is Greg doing these days?
Oh.
I'd like to see him at a peek-a-bee.
Well, you aren't going to see him. He's actually very much a recluse, and he didn't always act that way when he was running the program because he couldn't. He had to kind of act like he liked people, but he really, he really doesn't. He enjoys being on his own. What I like is that he is taking care of everything on the home front. So when I get home, there's a hot meal on the table and the laundry's done and the groceries have been. So I'm really enjoying that he seems to find being in charge of that is kind of his new thing. And he's also really enjoying getting up in the mountains. He's doing a lot of hiking, and we have 2 dogs, and he takes the dogs and they get exercised every day. And he's really enjoying getting back up and seeing our mountains, which he didn't have much time to do that when he was running the show with Utah Gymnastics. He talks about it being kind of 14 different plates that are always spinning, and to keep them all spinning was all encompassing. So he's enjoying slower days. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I've seen Tom on pictures of Facebook out recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
It was Europe and
Mm-hmm.
Asia. And
Mm-hmm.
so how far and wide do you do for recruitments, and how soon in advance do you do that?
Okay, so some of the pictures you've seen have been him going to support athletes that we have verbally committed to us that are coming in our near future. And his recent picture was in Peru, and we had an athlete that was competing there who has verbally committed to us. Now, I can't say her name. The rules tell me I can't promote that, so I can't tell you who, but sometimes his pictures are him following around these girls that he's recruited, that they say they're coming, and he doesn't want to lose them. And so he's...
Would you do that?
Well, we right now are working on our 2022 team. And I'm not proud of that, but it is the game we're in. And so we have to recruit really early. So we have some girls that verbally commit to us as a 9th grader. And I would say that their club coach and their parents are more the ones that we're recruiting, and they're the ones helping decide. And so then the athlete, when she becomes 17, you don't know if she still wants to come here. And sometimes when they become 17 and they become a young woman, we're not sure we want them to come here. So it's tricky. The recruiting is tricky. Yes?
American girls that get involved in gymnastics, do they tend to be from families that are more well-to-do because of the expense of training? And
Yes.
then what kind of high school background? Do many of them go through public or private high schools, or are they homeschooled?
Homeschooled, yes. Good questions. So yes, many of them come from middle to upper income families because it is an expensive sport. Most of them are paying in this day and age somewhere between $1,000 and $1,500 a month for their daughter to be trained at a high level. And then they're paying for their grips and those fancy leotards and their travel to and from meets, and they're even paying for the coaches to travel to and from all of those meets. So it's very expensive. And yes, it takes, and it's unusual to have somebody that doesn't come from that background. Once in a while, we'll get somebody that doesn't come from a household with much money, but there was usually something going on between the club coach and the parents in a trade. Mom was cleaning the gym because the athlete was so talented, they didn't want to lose that talent, and so they'd figure out a trade. That's been more the way. And then your second question was about...
Education, high school education?
Yes, homeschooled. Many of our athletes, some of our athletes are homeschooled. So the athletes that we recruit, we are trying to recruit some of the girls that are off our national team. Some of the girls that you might see at USA Championships was on in August, and the ones that you see at the Olympics. But we also try to recruit kids that are just under that level for a couple of reasons. First of all, if they become as known and good as a Simone Biles, then they go pro and then they never come to you because they've accepted money. And with the top kids, that's always you're waiting to see what they do. Is education at the University of Utah better than what I might make doing Dancing with the Stars and commercials? And so you don't always want your whole roster to be those that you're wondering. And so we try to recruit some kids just underneath that. We call it the JO level or level 10. And those kids usually go in brick and mortar. They go through normal schooling. But the kids on the national team usually have to be homeschooled in order to train in the way they need to make an Olympic team or a USA team. So we have a combo that come to Utah. Some that are homeschooled and others. So Michaela Skinner on our team was homeschooled most of her high school days. And then and Shannon McNatt actually was homeschooled. But then we have other girls on the team that did normal schooling. So, yeah. Other questions? Yes?
More of a clarification, is that the gymnastics team, your girls' team, don't they have the highest GPA? Is it the country in Pac-12?
I think we were 8th in the country this year of all the universities that have a gymnastics program. And here I think we were top again this year within our department. We've been top many years within our department, and we've had a couple of years where we were top in the country against all the universities. Thank you. Thank you. We usually have a GPA between about a 3.57 and a 3.67 as a team. So always above a 3.5. Yes. Yes. Oh, that's a good question. Back in the early 90s, we had a team. This would have been, I feel like this is coming back around now. I'm learning, if you live long enough, the styles and the trends all circle back again and again. And in the early 90s, we had a team that was very much into their muscles. And our poster showed all the girls kind of flexing and showing off their muscles. And we used some baby oil to make it really show in their poster and stuff. And so they loved their rock hard muscles. And Greg was looking for a nickname because we had the Runnin' Utes. We were beginning to fill the Huntsman Center like the Runnin' Utes did, and we thought we should have a nickname. And so we thought the Red Rocks of Southern Utah combined with the rock-solid muscles of our girls made for a good nickname. Red Rocks. Good question. Yes?
That reminds me that KUED is going to be producing Red Rocks. I don't know when it airs, and this group will go home and tell all their friends how much it was. People will be disappointed that they didn't see it.
Uh-huh.
So they can watch the documentary. Do you know when it's going to air?
I don't know that. I've been waiting. I'm trying to think of, is it Joe that's been helping? Joe Prokop has been the one working on it. And I know he got through a lot of interviews, and he even got Greg to come out of the hermit shell and go and get interviewed. But I do think that that will tell a lot of what I told you today in terms of the story and the history of the program. So that's a great idea. But I don't know when it's going to air. I haven't heard that it's done yet. It's close, good. Well, we'll have to see. I mean, KUED will, that's something to check on. Maybe I have your email. I can let Steve know when I know. Yeah, no, we're really excited about that. It's an hour documentary, which is that's a big deal for us. So, good question. All right, should I go on with just a few more things with the details of this year? Let's see. What's on the horizon for Utah Gymnastics in the next few years? So one thing that we're working on, we have a beautiful training facility. You can kind of see some of it in Shannon's video, and some of you might have actually done that last spring with Nancy that brought a group from this organization through our gym where we train. And it's, yeah, might go again. Yeah. Right, and we would,
So you'll get another chance
It's so easy to have people come to us. Like for me, I couldn't bring any athletes to you today because the rules say that this is our day off and the girls can't go do I can't ask them to do anything on their day off. The NCAA says that. So when you come into our training situation, then it's easy because you're right there and we're already there. We're there a lot. So we would love for you to come. But we are actually falling behind in terms of our facility in comparison to the other programs we're recruiting against, some of the top programs. So LSU has like a $16 million beautiful brand new training facility. Oklahoma's getting ready to do a redo of theirs that's several $million. We have what I consider an incredible facility, and the location is second to none. The fact that we're right there on the Hyper Walking Mall, where all the students come and go. We built it 20 years ago. It's 20 years old now, and we've kept it very nice. It still shows well, but we need some things. So we're getting ready to do an expansion of the Dumpke. So if you hear anything about the Dumpke expansion, hashtag Dumpke expansion. That is a fundraising event we have going on. We're hoping to do that in spring of 2020. So we still have some time that we're trying to collect funds, and we feel like it's about a $3 million project with our feasibility study, and we're already at 1.3 million in the bank. So our fans are helping us, and we've got 2 or 3 donors that donated pretty hefty, but I'm waiting for someone to maybe come forward and say, I'll finish it off. But until then, I am sending lots of handwritten thank you notes for all of our fans who are donating to our project. And what I like about it is that in our plans and design, we've already determined some naming rights opportunities. So anybody donating at a $500 level will have their name on the pillars of our program. And the pillars will actually just be cement pillars holding up our balcony that's going to look out at the Ochre Mountains. But on those pillars, we're going to wrap them with all the names of our $500 donors, which I'm hoping are many of the people that are sitting in the stands watching my girls. But I'd like them to feel a part of the help of our training facility expansion. So that's a little insight to that. Other things that we have going on. The athletes that have come to us this year, we have 4 new freshmen. We have, Adrian Randall has come to us from Sega Gymnastics in Temecula, California. I can't have favorites, but I have a favorite move that she does on balance beam. She has a signature element that she does on beam that there's nobody else in college gymnastics doing, and I'm excited about that because that's my event that I coach. And so Adrian has really nice beam work, so you'll want to watch for her there. She'll probably be on floor exercise as well, and maybe uneven bars. And then Crystal Issa is another freshman. She's come to us from Las Vegas, Nevada, and she has come from a club that their club has lots and lots of gymnasts, and because there's so many, the head coaches kind of write a assignment up on the wall, and the kids just go around and do it, and they aren't able to really coach them a lot because there's so many. So this little gal has never had coaching like she's getting it now, with 3 coaches in the gym with 14 girls. So she's getting lots of corrections on her feet and knees that are a little sloppy. But she is a talent, and she is actually vying for spots on all 4 events. And so watch for Crystal Issa. And then, let's see, my Hunter Dula is a local gymnast, although only local. Her family is a military family, and they've lived in a variety of places. She did spend some time in North Carolina, but before she came to our program, she spent a year at All-American Gymnastics down in Orem or Provo, almost to Provo. And so we consider her local because she at least spent a year before she came to us. And Hunter Dula. Hunter, and she's a little tiny thing. When you see her, you will wonder how in the world she's college age, because she looks to be around 10. She's adopted, and she and her family don't know anything about her original parents. So it's hard for Tom or I to know much about her genetic background. It looks to me like maybe she had really little people parents, because she is little. But she's fun to watch. She has a beautiful line. She's vying for a spot on bars right away and may break in on floor exercise. But it's always fun to have local gymnasts. We have right now on this team of 14, 4 girls that are from this area. It's the most we've ever had from the local area. And I have to give kudos to All-American Gymnastics. There's a coach, a male and a female coach down there that are doing a really good job. And that's part of why we have more local kids, because we're recruiting their kids. They're good enough to come to Utah and help us. So. And then my last freshman is Cammie Hall. And Cameron came to us late. She was one with the early recruiting that we didn't know about, and she wasn't that good back when we were recruiting her 9th grade class of people. But she started to become really good on especially floor and vault. She's powerful. And Cammie is African American, and she is the first gymnast. We have had African American gymnasts at University of Utah, but only with one parent. And so none of those girls looked African American. But Ashley Postel was, and Kyla Delaney was, and Cassandra Lopez. But Cammie Hall, both her parents are African American, and all the other coaches in the country are going, oh my gosh, Utah has a black girl. And they can't believe it. But Tom and I are, first of all, we had her come because she does a 10-0 vault, a Yuchenko 1.5 vault, which could really help our team, and she's powerful with her tumbling. And then on top of it, I think it could help us with the diversity. And there are more and more gymnasts across the country, young ones, who are African American, and we would like them to feel like this is a possibility for them. So we're very excited about that, and Cammie's been wonderful. She has a great family, and so that's my group of freshmen, 4 new freshmen. That's pretty big. When we have 2, it seems more doable. When we have 4, it's like, whoa. But they're transitioning well, and they're talented. So let's see. I think one last thing I wanted to talk about, and especially for those of you that maybe know a little bit about our program, the big change this year in our postseason, there is a change to the number of teams that qualify to the national championships and then the last day of national championships. So for many, many years, it's been 12 teams going to nationals, and then the Super 6 compete on the last night for the win. And now it's 8 that go to the national championships and 4 on the floor on the last day, 4. Yes, now this is something that my husband fought tooth and nail for through the last 20 years of his career. He did not think it made any sense to have 6 teams competing at once when there's only 4 events, because you never know who's ahead and who's behind. And there's a lot of truth to that. So he never felt like gymnastics was really conducive to television, live television, but yet he knew he wanted his teams on live television. You're not real unless you're live. And so he fought for that, but never got it done. And then finally, when he was done and retired, they implemented it. And now Tom and I are having to live with that plan of making top 8 and the 4 on the floor. But we feel like we have prepared with recruiting. In the early recruiting, we have prepared enough talent to make us one of the top 4 teams in the nation. We feel like we are training our athletes to get ready for that. One small difference is that at the regionals, instead of it being just a 1-day meet, it's now going to be 2. So there are 32 teams that go to regionals at 4 sites. And on the first day, they cut it down to 16. And on the second day, they cut it to the 8. So that's different too, in that our girls will have to compete 2 days in a row, twice at the end of the season in 2 weeks separated weekends. So they'll get a little break, but At nationals, it was the one time we had to compete back-to-back nights. Now we have to compete back-to-back nights at regionals, 2 weeks later doing it again at nationals. I do think this all lends itself to a team that's very consistent, that doesn't just rise to the occasion once in a blue moon. If you can do it over and over again, you may come out on the top. So we're hopeful that this will be good for our program, but it definitely has upped the stakes a little bit. So that's kind of my last thing on what's going on now, and I will open it up for a few more questions. Yes?
Okay, can you also speak to about the floor situation, or the full race podium?
The podium, yes.
And how we're not, that's all become the rage, and that's now.
It has, yes. So that's been going on in international gymnastics for a long time. They've always put the Olympics, World Championships, USA Championships on a podium, which is basically just staging for the event. So the balance beam is put up on a stage about so high, and then the balance beam is 4 feet higher, and the uneven bars are set up on that stage, and it makes it so the athlete is kind of elevated, and it's more crowd friendly to see the athlete. The judges sit more with their chest kind of at the stage level watching, rather than right on the stage. So now it's starting to sneak into college. And at our biggest meets of the year, which would be the conference championships and also the national championships, they're wanting it to be on a podium. And not all of the universities can put a podium in their facility. The Huntsman Center absolutely can't do it. We could maybe put 2 events on podium on that small arena floor. So it's made it so some of the universities can't host. So now our national championships are not at university settings. They are at a city. So we go the next 4 years to the national championships in Fort Worth, Texas. And it's in one of their city arenas where they can fit podium. What's really exciting, though, is Pac-12 has fallen behind in that our Pac-12 championships has not been on podium, and Southeast Conference, SEC, has been on podium for 8 years now. So their athletes are getting ready for the national championships at their conference championship, and Pac-12 has not been. And so all of our coaches said, yeah, we want to do that. We want to put it on podium. And then Tom, my co-head coach, was the only one that worked hard to find a place that would take the Pac-12 championships. And no other coach worked on it. And we got it at the Maverick Center in West Valley for the next 3 years. Pac-12 championships will be, we don't like to call it local. We like to call it a neutral site. It's in West Valley. Of course, Valerie Condos at UCLA begs to differ. She thinks it's very unfair that Utah gets to have it there, but she did nothing to get it in California somewhere, which she could have. Yes?
What about the Justice Center?
Yes, Energy Solutions. I knew what you were talking about. We went where we felt like somebody was interested. So Kevin Brewster, maybe? I don't know. The person that runs a lot at the Maverick Center really wanted this, and he wanted it so bad that he bought a podium. So he actually bought a podium. He's not renting one for that event. He bought one for the Maverick Center, and Tom's told him that there are many different events in the course of years that he could bid on now that he has a podium. So there could be more gymnastics events coming to the area because Maverick Center was willing to do that. I actually like that we're there. Energy Solutions holds, what, 22,000 people? There's no way. I know we put 15 in here, but for regionals we don't. For a regional championship, we put 8,000 to 10,000 in there. So Maverick Center holds, I think, with podium, it'll be 9,500, and that's perfect. So we should be able to sell it out, and it should feel full and intimate for the teams competing. So, good questions. Yes?
Just a comment, those of us who follow Utah teams across sports, there are good years and not so good years. The Red Rocks never disappoint.
Thank you.
And that's really nice when you're a youth.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, we appreciate that. I mean, I wanted to give you the history of the program and just understand that it's a lifetime of work, and it's passionate people. And, you know, Greg and I were the ones, I mean, Greg started it, he was passionate, he got it rolling, and as I came in to help him, I felt like we really worked hard to integrate good people around us that covered our weaknesses and helped us with that passion. We rarely have had an assistant coach, only until very recently, that's not here for 10, 15 years. So we were able to run the program with, you know, a handful of people that cared. I mean, really cared about what they were doing. And I think for that, I mean, we've been able to see kind of a lifetime of work that has stayed competitive. It has not been easy, I mean, to stay competitive. And we have not won a championship since 1995. So thankfully, our fans are still coming and understanding that we are one of the best in the country, but we have not been the best in a long time. And Tom and I are working hard to get there. Tom wants to win his first championship, and I'm really hopeful I can help him. Yes?
Neil deGrasse Tyson on NPR mentioned he has the same retirement plan as your spouse.
Oh, okay.
But you mentioned injuries are the downside of this all. And what Mary Lou Renner was on Dancing with the Stars mentioning all her artificial body parts. Football is all talking about head injuries and doing something about it. What's going on in gymnastic world to mitigate injuries? You know, is that making it harder to recruit people? Are there actually things that are being done or can be done technologically or coaching to keep these
well, I know we have some scientists in the sport that are trying to figure out a few things about the equipment that we use and things, and if there's some stuff that can be done to protect their bodies a little bit more. Well, I don't really know. I haven't heard anything at this point, you know, but I do think we have some people that are trying. But to be honest with you, right now, what has been more devastating to our sport than anything has been the Larry Nassar scandal. So the injuries, yes, I mentioned that because over the years, for me to watch an athlete go down and not get to finish that season or something, I just hate that. It's just sad. But almost all the time they come back from that and do well. But the Larry Nassar thing has been really detrimental to our sport. I feel like we have a cloud and a black eye right now. And I would say that for me, that scares me more right in the immediate time. That if there's been some of that going on and now they're finding more people and they're trying to get rid of coaches that have that going on in their private gym clubs, that just scares me to death. So I'm hopeful we can take care of some of that first and foremost, clean things up. Yes? Yeah? One more question for the group. Okay, time for one more. Okay.
I don't have a question per se, but I did attend that facility.
Okay, the little tour.
Yeah, and it was, I will tell everybody here, it was really worthwhile, very interesting. I would like to go again.
Good.
I encourage anyone, when you hear about it, to consider going.
Well, thank you. That's nice, and we would love to have your group again. That was easy. And Jen White is our chief of staff, and that's who helps you with that.
You get to watch a practice. So it's not like you're just touring the building.
Yeah, you
tour
get to
the
see the
building,
girls in action.
But then you sit and you can ask all these questions of why is she doing that routine, or why is she incorporating that, and what does that mean when she's up here? And you watch them and all the apparatus, and some of them are in harnesses, and it's just a very fascinating.
Yeah, what you see in the Huntsman Center is just the finished product, the getting ready and the training.
She talks about what Shannon talked about, all the different things that you can build up. They don't just all of a sudden start twirling.
True.
They do various things.
True, yes.
Have you thought about recruiting Chinese gymnastics?
Well, you know, we started in on the international talk, and I mentioned to Nancy that some of those pictures was Tom following around girls that have already committed that are USA girls. Greg and I worked really hard to have an international gymnast on many of our teams over the years, and then it got more and more difficult to get them into the country and make sure that all of the NCAA rules were followed in terms of their curriculum. And Tom and I have felt less interested in jumping through all those hoops as long as we have a shot at some of the best USA gymnasts. Greg and I felt like for a period of time we were beginning to fall behind and losing out to Florida, UCLA, Michigan, Georgia, Alabama with recruits, and we were having to go to some of the best from another country to keep our team at the top. And so we did that and we could manage it, but now it's so difficult to get those kids in. So Tom and I just are not really excited about that. I miss the crossing of the cultures. It was an amazing thing for Greg and I, but for our girls, to have people that came from other countries and what... Not from Romania, but we've had several from Germany, one from Hungary, one from South Africa, Great Britain, and then several from Canada. So, but it was always good. I mean, their transition is slow. It usually took a couple years for them to begin to come into their own. Teaching them about competition and the teams that, you know, are our worst enemies. and that we don't even talk about the school down south unless you're telling some joke where they're the brunt of the joke. I mean, trying to teach Grit Hoffman that, finally in her 4th year, she told a joke that had a BYU spin on it, where it put them where they needed to be. And I was like, yes, finally, you've made it. So, I mean, that was the only thing with our international kids, but they were really they brought a cool fabric to the team, a really cool fabric.
Well, thank you very much, Coach.
Thank you.